The air tasted wrong. It wasn't just the iron tang of blood or the sour fumes from the dying manufactorum. It was sweeter, thicker, like rot left to ferment beneath a summer sun. Sergeant Kale wiped grime from his rebreather lens, but the smell seeped through anyway, crawling into his lungs like a living thing. Around him, the ruins of Tarsus Hive steamed in the dawn light, every corpse slick with a film of greenish moisture. Movement. 40 meters ahead, came the whisper through Vox. Private Wren's voice cracked with static or fear. Kale motioned for silence, his gauntlet raised. The squad crept forward between shattered hablocks, boots sinking into puddles that hissed and bubbled. Every sound felt swollen, the drip of liquid, the slow, wet creak of metal. Then came the buzzing, low at first, then louder. A swarm building behind the air itself. Kale froze. He'd heard that sound before, not in this world but in nightmares whispered by plague-born veterans. A voice drifted through the fog, gentle, mocking. "You breathe my air, little mortal. How does it taste?" Wren's scream broke the silence. He tore off his helmet, clawing at his face as if something invisible crawled beneath his skin. Kale lunged to help, but it was too late. Flesh sloughed away like wax under flame. Beneath, glistening tissue pulsed, birthing maggots that fell wriggling to the ground. Wren didn't die, he laughed, a wet gurgle of joy as his eyes burst into honeyed rot. Cowell stumbled back, his auspex flickered, reading spiked, then vanished. The Vox filled with whispers, each voice murmuring the same phrase in a dozen tongues. "Grandfather welcomes you." From the mist, a shape emerged. Enormous, patient. The plague flies parted around its bulk, a silhouette that shimmered with decay. The creature's belly split open with a lazy smile, revealing hundreds of tiny, giggling mouths. The stench rolled forward like a tide, and Kale gagged, bile burning his throat. He raised his bolter, but his hands trembled. The weapon felt heavier than before, its metal sweating oily green tears. "Why fight?" the voice cooed. "You're tired, aren't you? So much pain, so much loss. Let it rot away. Let it be beautiful." Kale dropped to his knees, coughing. His vision swam. Flies gathered at his mouth, crawling inside. He tried to scream, but only laughter came out. Someone else's laughter echoing in his skull. Then the world shifted. Colors thickened. The ruined city melted like wax, revealing something vast and pulsing beneath reality. A garden where every leaf dripped pus and every flower hummed with fevered joy. And standing in the center, vast as a mountain, was Nurgle himself, smiling. Kale stumbled forward, his boots sinking into the flesh-like soil of Nurgle's garden. The ground pulsed with a heartbeat that wasn't his own. Beneath the cracked ceramite of his armor, his skin itched, moved, as if something alive crept beneath it. The air shimmered with golden dust, heavy with sweetness. Every breath felt thick, syrupy, wrong. Flowers the size of skulls turned to watch him pass, their petals dripping clear slime that sizzled on the ground. Flies floated in clouds, forming vague human shapes that dissolved whenever he tried to focus. "Where am I?" Kale's voice rasped through his helmet speakers. His Vox crackled. A dozen distorted replies answered, all in his voice. "Home," they whispered. "Peace. Acceptance." He fell to his knees again, coughing. Something warm filled his mouth. When he spat, it wasn't blood. It was green and glowing, wriggling with larval life. He stared in horror, then again in wonder. The fear that had frozen his heart moments ago began to loosen. From the fog came laughter, deep, rolling, paternal. It wasn't cruel, it was almost loving. "Ah, my poor child," the voice said. "You've fought so hard for so long. Your body breaks, your mind bleeds. Let it all return to me. I am the end of your suffering." Kale turned, and there, through the mist, loomed Nurgle, not as a single shape, but as infinite decay, made flesh. His belly split open in a grotesque grin, releasing waves of pestilent warmth that smelled like old bread and rain on graves. Tiny, Chittering Nurglings crawled over his bloated arms, laughing like children. Kale wanted to run, but his legs no longer obeyed. The armor around his calves had fused to the ground, roots sprouting through the joints. With every heartbeat, those roots drank deep from the rotting earth and sent something back up into him. "Please," he croaked. I don't want this." "But you do," the voice murmured from inside his skull now. "You crave release. You crave to stop fighting." Kale's memories flickered like dying candles. Faces of his squad, the screams, the endless wars fought in the Emperor's name. Every victory, every death, every meaningless order, it all bled into a dull ache of exhaustion. "What did your god give you?" Nurgle's tone softened further. "Pain, duty, emptiness. But I offer something better." A massive, glistening hand reached toward him, each finger crowned with blackened nails, the size of swords. When it touched his chest plate, it didn't crush, it melted through, like wax meeting sunlight. Warmth flooded his body, a comfort so total it felt like drowning in honey. For a moment, Kale smiled. Tears, or pus, ran down his cheeks. Maybe this was peace. Then came the itch again, furious, all-consuming. His veins bulged, crawling with green fire. His armor cracked, spilling steam that smelled of rotted fruit. From inside, something laughed, not Kale anymore, something newer. The garden trembled as the first signs of rebirth began. The world pulsed around him, alive and breathing. Kale's armor split open like a shell, hissing steam as vines of blackened tissue pushed through the cracks. His blood was no longer red, it flowed thick and yellow-green, glowing faintly in the gloom. The garden responded. The very air trembled with excitement, as if thousands of unseen lungs inhaled together. Spore clouds drifted down like snow, coating him in glistening dew that hissed where it touched metal. He fell forward, catching himself on trembling arms, or what used to be arms. His gauntlets were soft now, pulsing with veins, skin, and steel merged. He could feel the ground through them, the slow pulse of rot, the gentle heartbeat of death itself. From above, Nurgle's laughter rolled like thunder. "Do you feel it, my child? The warmth that never fades?"
"The peace that asks nothing of you." Kale tried to speak, but his jaw refused to move. It was fusing shut, his skin knitting with a thin film of green mucus. Inside his chest, something moved. Small shapes, squirming just beneath the surface. Parasites, or children.
His mind flickered again. He saw flashes, his squadmates, his planet, the Emperor's sigil glowing gold against a void of endless black. And then that light cracked, faded, died. The Emperor had never spoken to him. Not once in all those years of devotion. But now, Nurgle whispered kindness. He felt a hand, warm, bloated, tender, brush his face. Where it touched, skin peeled away, revealing living rot that pulsed with wet joy. Pain should have come. It didn't. Only a strange, dizzying relief. "Let go," the voice said softly, deep and ancient. "The struggle was never yours to win. You've suffered enough. Come home." Something inside Kale broke, quietly, almost peacefully. His thoughts slowed, melting together into one steady rhythm. Acceptance. He sank deeper into the garden floor. Flowers bloomed where his fingers touched, petals curling to reveal tiny faces that giggled in perfect harmony. The flies that once buzzed like torment now hummed like a lullaby. His rebreather fell away. He didn't need it anymore. The air that once poisoned him now fed him. Each breath filled his lungs with a sweet, heavy rot that healed and destroyed all at once. In the distance, the ruins of Tarsis Hive flickered, the real world struggling to hold its grip. Kale could sense his body still there, kneeling in the muck, eyes empty. But here, in this impossible place, he had already crossed the threshold. Nurgle leaned close, and Kale felt his soul unravel like silk in warm water. "Good," the Plague Father murmured, almost lovingly. "You are mine now, A seed for the next bloom. The garden sighed in delight. The last of Chaos' humanity dissolved, his laughter joining the endless chorus of decay. And in that final, impossible peace, Chaos smiled. Chaos awoke to the sound of laughter, not cruel laughter, joyful, almost innocent. The air shimmered around him like mist after rain, thick with perfume that smelled of both honey and decay. When he opened his eyes, he no longer saw the ruins of Tarsis Hive. He saw the garden of Nurgle in full bloom. Towering fungal trees reached into an amber sky. Fat, slug-like creatures with the faces of infants crawled along roots, slick with pus. Everywhere, life and death intertwined. Petals sprouting from corpses, flies kissing blossoms, rivers of rot reflecting the light of unseen suns. Chaos rose to his feet and felt no pain. His armor was gone, replaced by skin that looked like cracked clay stretched over muscle and moss. Where wounds had once festered, small flowers now grew. They whispered softly, feeding on the warmth of his blood. Something moved nearby. 3 figures emerged from the haze, each more grotesque and glorious than the last. They were massive, their bellies split open to reveal squirming entrails, their flesh shimmering with wet vitality. And yet, they smiled. Another one wakes, one of them croaked, his voice like mud bubbling in a swamp. Praise be to grandfather, his garden grows. Chaos tried to speak, but his throat made only a wet gurgle. The largest of the 3, a towering warrior with a rusted scythe fused into his arm, stepped closer. He placed a heavy, decaying hand on Chaos' shoulder. "Do not fight it," he said gently. "We all sang the same song when we arrived. Pain fades, fear fades, only the gift remains." Chaos' mind quivered at his words. He remembered the cold iron of his bolter, the disciplined silence of imperial faith, the oath to the emperor whispered over dead comrades. And then he looked into the faces of these monsters and saw something he had not seen in years.
Peace. A small creature, round, jiggling, with too many eyes, bounced toward him. It giggled and clung to his leg like a child. "You smell new," it chirped. "Fresh bloom. Grandfather loves new blooms." The others chuckled. Their deep voices like thunder filtered through honey.
Chaos knelt, running a warped hand across the ground. The soil was warm, pulsing like living flesh. Every breath he took filled him with strength. His mind still whispered resistance. This isn't real. This is corruption. This is sin. But those thoughts weakened with each passing heartbeat. The warrior with the scythe leaned in. "Tell me, brother," he asked softly. "Did the false emperor ever hold you? Did he ever whisper your name?" Chaos' breath caught. No, he had only ever spoken to silence. The warrior smiled. "Then you already belong here. You've simply forgotten how to love." Behind them, the sky broke open. A colossal shadow stirred beyond the clouds. Nurgle himself, vast and smiling, a mountain of flesh and warmth. He laughed, and the world bloomed anew. Chaos fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the sight. He should have screamed. Instead he wept, not from terror, but from the unbearable beauty of it. He was reborn. Time lost meaning in Nurgle's garden. Days, if such things still existed, pulsed in cycles of bloom and rot, flowers rising, blackening, and collapsing into soil within moments. Chaos wandered through this shifting paradise with his silent guides, the plague-bearers humming a melody that made the air itself tremble. Every step left trails of spores that danced like golden dust. Where his feet touched, new life formed. Moss, vines, small slug creatures that giggled before melting into puddles of sweet-smelling ooze. Chaos felt the rhythm of it all inside his bones. A heartbeat that wasn't his yet somehow was. He understood now why they called Nurgle grandfather. The god did not rule his followers through fear or chains. He nurtured them, like a gardener tending to withering plants, pruning rot only to let it bloom anew. Still, a part of him clung to who he had been. A soldier, a man of iron will and faith. He turned to his guide, the warrior with the rusted scythe. "Why me?" Kale rasped, his voice heavy with bubbling phlegm. Why choose me for this gift? The warrior smiled, his eyes hidden behind folds of green flesh. You mistake choice for mercy, he said. Grandfather does not take. He waits. When your despair blooms, when your suffering ripens, he merely gathers the fruit. Kale looked at his reflection in a pool of black water. He saw not a monster, but something alive. Mushrooms grew from his shoulders, and small flies orbited his head like tiny moons. He raised a trembling hand, and watched as skin peeled away, revealing smooth, glistening tissue beneath. No pain, only warmth. Do you still mourn your world? The warrior asked. Kale thought of the hive cities, children starving in shadows, priests burning plague victims to purify them. He remembered the stench of rot in the hospitals long before the war began. It had always been there. The Imperium just called it order. He whispered, almost ashamed. It was already dying. The warrior nodded slowly. Then rejoice, you are part of its rebirth. Above them, the sky changed. Clouds of rot peeled apart to reveal vast tendrils of green light stretching down into the mortal realm. Kale saw visions within them, worlds aflame, soldiers coughing black bile, rivers turning to swamps that shimmered with spores. And yet, the people below did not simply die. They changed. Their wounds were sealed with moss. Their screams turned into laughter as bloated forms rose from the mud. It was horrifying. It was beautiful. A voice filled the air, soft, ancient and kind. Little one, do you see now? I am not destruction. I am at the end of suffering. Kale fell to his knees. The voice was everywhere, in his blood, in the wind, in the laughter of the slugs at his feet. He wept again. But these tears tasted sweet, like nectar. Grandfather, he whispered, what do you want of me? Only that you share the gift, the voice replied. Let the rot bloom where hearts have hardened. Let despair ripen into hope. Kale's mind cracked open with understanding. He was no longer a soldier of the Emperor. He was a seed, a vessel of new life. When the vision faded, he stood alone in the garden. The flies around him began to sing louder, and his body trembled with purpose. He smiled, a wide, serene smile, as his flesh split open like ripe fruit, releasing clouds of glowing spores into the wind. The song of decay had begun. The spores that burst from Kale's body did not fall. They ascended. They floated upward like shimmering gold dust, vanishing into the rotting clouds above the garden. For a heartbeat, silence ruled. Then the world shuddered, as though something vast and ancient had awakened. Kale felt it before he saw it, a vibration that traveled through the roots, the air, even his veins. The garden around him pulsed like a giant, breathing organism. In the distance he saw a towering gate made of rib cages twist open, releasing a torrent of luminous vapor into the void. The mist broke through the fabric of reality itself. Through it, Kale saw a vision, the mortal realm, a hive world somewhere deep in the Imperium. Its spires stabbed at a choking sky. Billions of souls moved like insects under layers of industry and filth. He remembered those streets. He had walked them as a man, and now he watched them change. The spores rained down like invisible dust. A worker in a factory coughed once, twice, and then smiled faintly. His skin grew pale, his eyes soft. He fell to the ground, but when others rushed to help, they saw flowers blooming from his mouth. Green and gold. The panic spread faster than the sickness. Within hours, entire sectors began to rot, steel walls bending and melting, turning to soft, pulsing tissue that oozed life. But it wasn't chaos. There was order in the decay, everything connected, every surface breathing as one, like veins feeding a great heart beneath the world. Kale's vision zoomed closer, cinematic, fluid, terrifying. A mother held her child as both coughed black vapor. She whispered prayers, not to the Emperor, but to Grandfather Nurgle, though she didn't know the name. Her tears turned to honey-colored slime. She kissed her child's forehead, and the child smiled through the rot. Kel felt his chest swell with emotion. It wasn't cruelty. It wasn't punishment. It was renewal through decay. The idea that nothing dies, everything transforms. He whispered to himself, trembling. It's beautiful. The plague-bearer beside him tilted its head. Beauty is just another word for surrender, it croaked. Chaos turned toward the garden again, and realized something horrifying. The spores were not only spreading through the mortal realm, they were reshaping the warp itself. Where once there had been chaos and madness, now bloomed orderly rot, vines weaving through daemon flesh, flowers growing atop bubbling rivers of filth, and within it all, Chaos felt Nurgle's laughter, warm, rumbling, endless. Then he saw his own reflection in a pool of pus-like water. His body was no longer human. His eyes glowed faintly green, his veins traced with golden light. His armor had fused with his flesh. When he spoke, spores drifted from his lips like breath in cold air. But there was peace. He understood what mortals never could. Life was never meant to stay clean. It was meant to grow, and growth demands rot. Behind him, a rusted bell tolled, deep and resonant. Its sound rippled across dimensions. And Chaos, once a soldier, now knelt as a herald, a living sermon of corruption turned salvation. As the bell's echo faded, the voice of Grandfather returned. Your purpose begins, little one. Spread what you have become. Let decay show them the truth. Chaos rose, his hand outstretched toward the gate. Then let the bloom begin, he whispered. The ribcage gate opened wider, and he stepped through. The gate tore open like the splitting of a wound. Chaos stepped through, and the universe bled around him. The air crackled, one foot in the warp's grotesque beauty, the other in the cold, rust-colored skies of the mortal world. His boots struck ferrocrete, but each step left behind a smear of moss and decay. He was home, though it no longer felt like it. The hive world of Gorath Prime stretched before him, its horizon choking under pollution and the endless drone of industry. Machines screamed. Sirens howled. Somewhere far below, billions of workers slaved beneath lights that never dimmed. But Chaos saw it all through new eyes, each glimmer of oil, each flicker of smoke now alive with microbial wonder. For the first time since his rebirth, he felt the tug of memory. He remembered the barracks, the hunger, the prayers to a god who never answered, the cold iron faith of the Imperium. He clenched his hand, and the sound was like wet bark cracking. His gauntlet was now half flesh, half metal, pulsating with gentle green veins. From the joints, tiny spores drifted outward, carried by the wind. He looked to the sky and smiled faintly. Father, he whispered, they will know your kindness. The camera cuts, over the shoulder, to a group of Imperial guardsmen stationed nearby. They were tense, shadows of fatigue under their helmets. The smell of oil and death clung to their uniforms. When Chaos stepped from the smoke, they froze. Identify yourself, one shouted. His voice cracked, fear behind the authority. Chaos didn't answer. He raised his head, revealing the halo of faint glowing spores floating around him like drifting fireflies. His armor bore no markings, only strange vines coiling across its plates, and the faint rhythmic beating of something alive beneath. By the throne, one soldier whispered, "What are you?" Chaos took another step forward. "A messenger," he said softly, his voice layered, two tones overlapping, human and something beyond. "You pray for deliverance. You toil for eternity. I will bring you freedom." The men lifted their last guns, trembling. But the first shot never came, because as the wind passed between them, it carried invisible spores that brushed against exposed skin. One soldier coughed, then another. They dropped their weapons, clawing at their throats, but there was no pain, only a strange warmth spreading through their bodies. Their veins began to glow faintly green under the skin. Chaos watched with sorrow, not cruelty. "You see?" he said quietly. "No more hunger, no more fear. One of them gasped, "You're killing us." Kale shook his head slowly. "I'm freeing you." The camera pans around him, cinematic slow motion. Grass begins to sprout through the cracks of the ferrocrate. The air grows humid. The steel around them darkens, then softens, breathing faintly like flesh. In minutes, the entire outpost becomes part of the garden's bloom, beautiful, horrifying, alive. Kale kneels amid it all, whispering a prayer that sounds both human and divine. Decay, and live again. He looks upward, and sees, for a split second, a figure watching him from the clouds. A hooded Inquisitor ship hovers silently above, scanning the anomaly. The hunt has begun. The storm broke before dawn. Lighting split the clouds in sickly green arcs as the inquisitorial gunship descended, cutting through the fungal fog that now smothered the outskirts of Gorath Prime. The city below pulsed faintly, its metal towers slick with moss, its air filled with drifting luminous spores that shimmered like falling snow. Inside the gunship's hull, Inquisitor Lyra Voss tightened her gauntlets. Her armor hissed with sterilizing vapors. The sigil of the Inquisition glowed red across her chest plate, a beacon of purity amid infection. "Bio-readings," she barked. "Unstable," her aide replied. "Organic contamination spreads exponentially." "But the radiation signature is human." Lyra's jaw clenched. "Humans don't rot the air it breathes." She stepped to the viewport, the camera following her face reflected in the glass. Her eyes hard but haunted. "Deploy the sanctified strike team. We're burning this infection out." The gunship's rear hatch dropped open with a roar of wind and fire. Lyra strode out first, cloak whipping around her as acid rain hissed on her armor. The land that had once been an industrial plain was now alive. Slick vines coiling through pipes, metal softened by a pulse that was almost like breathing. Her boots sank slightly into the ground, the ferrocrete spongy beneath her. "By the throne," whispered one soldier. "It's growing." Lyra raised her hand, motioning silence. "Something lives here," she said. "Find it. And when you do," a voice echoed across the field. Low, calm, almost gentle. "You came to kill what you don't understand." The team turned. Kale stepped out from behind the wreckage of an old transport. His form was draped in corroded ceramite, vines growing across his armor like veins. His eyes burned faintly, not with malice but melancholy. Lyra leveled her plasma pistol. "Identify yourself, heretic." Kale tilted his head slightly, the motion oddly human. "Once, I was Lieutenant Kale Varan, 32nd Imperial. You sent us here to die when the plague came." Her eyes narrowed. "Impossible. That regiment was purged centuries ago." He smiled faintly. "And yet, here I stand." The camera cuts, close on his gauntlet, as tiny tendrils curl from it, weaving into the ground, spreading with every heartbeat. The sound is wet, organic, rhythmic. Lyra's vox crackled. "Inquisitor spore density rising, containment breach imminent." "Then burn it," she said flatly. The soldiers opened fire. Bolter rounds tore through Kale's chest, but instead of blood, thick, glowing sap spilled out. He staggered, but did not fall. Each wound blossomed with new life, fungal petals unfurling like wounds reborn. He raised his hand. "Don't you see?" His voice boomed, echoing with Nurgle's resonance. "Even in your violence there is creation." The spores burst outward, a living shockwave. One by one, soldiers dropped their weapons, clutching at their helmets as visions filled their minds. Fields of green, laughter amid decay. A world without fear of death. Lyra resisted, screaming as the visions clawed at her thoughts. "This is corruption." "No," Kale whispered. "This is mercy." She fired her plasma pistol. The bolt struck his chest, burning away half his armor. The impact threw him back into the spreading garden. Steam hissed from the wound. Kale looked down at it, touched the bubbling flesh, and smiled through the pain. "It still hurts," he murmured. "That means I'm still human." For a heartbeat, Lyra hesitated. There was something in his tone, regret, not defiance. Then the ground beneath them trembled. From the cracks, tendrils erupted, massive, luminous vines twisting upward, encircling Chaos like the embrace of some unseen god. The storm above turned green, lightning painting everything in shades of rot and rebirth. Chaos raised his arms as spores filled the air like stars. "Father," he whispered, "they will see your gift." The camera pans up. Lyra's face lit by the swirling green sky, torn between duty and the horrifying beauty before her. She whispered, almost to herself, "Emperor, forgive me." Then she pressed the detonator. The screen cuts to white. The explosion burned the sky. A sun of holy fire consumed the landscape, and for a moment it seemed the plague was undone. The blast wave flattened towers, vaporized moss, and silenced every crawling, whispering thing. Then came the quiet, vast, unnatural, endless. Ash rained from above, like snow. The air shimmered with fading plasma heat, and the ground was nothing but glass and bone dust. Inquisitor Lyra Voss rose from the rubble, armor half melted, face blackened beneath the cracked visor, her breathing rasped, shallow and uneven. Her vox crackled static, no replies, no squad voices. She was alone. The camera lingers on her visor, reflecting the burning horizon, then slowly pans down to reveal movement within the glassed soil. Tiny bubbles pulsing faintly beneath the surface. Lyra staggered forward, muttering a prayer through bloodied lips. "Emperor guides me through the pestilent night." Then crack. The ground split open beneath her feet. From within, something breathed. Not air. Something heavier. Wet. Alive. Steam rolled upward, carrying the scent of sweetness and rot. Lyra aimed her pistol down into the fissure, and froze. Beneath the glass lay roots, glowing veins of greenish gold, pulsing like arteries. The detonation hadn't purged the plague. It had fed it. From the fissure rose a shape, blackened, charred, yet unmistakably human. Chaos, or what was left of him. The fire had burned away his armor, revealing flesh that shimmered with faint bioluminescence, skin streaked with golden rot. The symbols of the Imperial Aquila were still etched faintly on his chest, overgrown now with vines and spores that pulsed with every heartbeat. Lyra stumbled backward, voice trembling. "No, this isn't possible." Chaos' eyes opened, two orbs of soft emerald light. His voice, when it came, was neither human nor daemon, but both. "Fire purifies, but it also nourishes. You've given me a new form anew." His steps were slow, deliberate, the ground sprouting flowers with every footfall. The music undercuts to a low, haunting chant, whispers in Nurgle's tongue, blending with Chaos' echoing breath. Lyra raised her pistol again, but her hands shook. "Stay back," she warned, voice cracking. Chaos tilted his head slightly, that same calm expression returning. "Do you still believe the Emperor wants your suffering?" She fired. 1, 2, 3 plasma bolts, each striking his chest, burning through glowing rut. He did not fall. Each wound sealed over, flesh reforming with veins of light. Lyra's scream broke into sobs. "Why won't you die?" Chaos stepped closer. "Because he won't let me." A silence fell. Not the quiet of victory, but the hush before revelation. Chaos knelt before her, massive, decayed yet almost gentle, and placed one hand against her armor. The metal hissed, then softened, as if corroded by breath alone. Beneath her visor, her eyes widened in horror, and something else, understanding. "You don't have to fight it," Chaos whispered. "You felt it too, the endless grief of obedience. He gives purpose. Father gives peace." Lyra's breathing slowed. The camera zooms in on her hand, trembling on the trigger, her visor fogged. Inside she was crying. "I've seen your peace," she said finally, her voice breaking. "It smells like death." Chaos smiled, not in mockery, but in deep sorrowful affection. "Then perhaps death is the truest mercy." He released her, and turned his face upward. The clouds above swirled in vast spirals, green lightning, gold mist as spores rained like starlight. The whole horizon pulsed, alive again. Lyra watched, helpless, as the dead land began to breathe once more. Through the crackling comms, faintly came a transmission, a distant voice, frantic. Inquisitor, do you copy? New contamination wave detected. Sector lost. Repeat, Gorath Prime is lost. Her knees gave way. She fell to the ground, exhausted, trembling, staring up at the spreading plague that no weapon could stop. Kale's silhouette vanished into the mist. His final words carried on the wind. Tell them, it doesn't end with death. It begins. The shot lingers on Lyra's visor, reflecting the spores, green lights flickering like stars. Then, fade to black. 3 weeks after Gorath Prime burned, its name was erased from every Imperial record. The Inquisition declared exterminatus confirmed, and the sector sealed. No transmissions were to be sent. No ships were to approach. But the void carries whispers faster than light. Freighters passing near the quarantine zone reported strange signals, rhythmic pulses, like heartbeats. Others spoke of hymns echoing through the warp, layered voices chanting in tones too harmonious to be random static. They called it the Choir of Spores. The first pilgrim ship came from Selenite, a rust-bloated freighter retrofitted by zealots who claimed to have seen visions. Their leader was a priest once known as Father Hadrian. His sermons had once praised the Emperor's eternal vigilance. Now he spoke of the garden between death and life, in the cold cargo bay, before hundreds of weary souls. Hadrian raised a cracked reliquary, once containing a saint's bones, now filled with soil from Gorath Prime's surface. The air shimmered with fungal motes. Brothers and sisters, he said, voice trembling with joy and fever. We were taught that purity lies in rejecting decay, but what if decay is not corruption? What if it is renewal? A woman from the crowd shouted, "You speak heresy." Hadrian smiled softly, eyes glassy. Then let my heresy bloom. He tipped the reliquary open, and the spores danced upward, shimmering like emerald dust. They entered his lungs as he breathed deeply. Within moments, roots of green veins spread across his skin, glowing faintly beneath the pallor. He neither screamed nor fell. He smiled. Around him, those gathered began to weep, some in horror, others in awe. And in that trembling silence, the first pilgrims of decay were born. Cut to a wide shot, their ship drifting through the void, trailing faint green vapor like pollen in the dark. Meanwhile, deep within the Inquisition fortress at Titan Reach, Inquisitor Lyra Voss sat alone in her debriefing chamber, bandaged, pale and motionless. She stared at the encrypted slate that contained Kale's last recorded transmission. The logs recovered from his armor were incomplete, corrupted by warp interference. But what survived was impossible. A low hum filled the chamber. The projection flickered, Kale's face emerging in flickering static, half human, half luminous. Lyra, the recording said, his tone calm but heavy. I saw it, beyond death, beyond the Emperor's shadow. The garden breathes. You will too. Her fist clenched. Delete file, she whispered. The servitor obeyed. The hologram vanished. But in the reflection of her data slate, faintly spores drifted across the surface of the glass, glowing green for just an instant. Lyra didn't see them. She just sat there, trembling, torn between faith and dread. Outside her chamber, the fortress echoed with the hum of quarantine alarms. Another world, Virelva, had gone silent. The Vox reports described strange phenomena, plants growing through stone, corpses sprouting blossoms, and people smiling as they died. Lyra stood, her eyes cold, resolving hardening. Prepare my ship, she said to the Vox operator. Destination, Virel. If Kale's rot spreads faith now, I will burn the sermon itself. The camera pulls back slowly, through the cold metal corridors of the Inquisition dreadnought, until it reaches the stars, where faint, shimmering trails of green drift between worlds, like pollen crossing the cosmos. The bloom had begun. Fade out. Deep choir voices whisper. In rot we rise. The descent through Viova's atmosphere was like sinking into a dying lung. Thick clouds churned in shades of brown and green, rolling with lightning that pulsed like veins beneath bruised flesh. Lyra's strike cruiser, Divine Judicator, shuddered as it broke through the toxic layers. "Environmental readings are inconsistent," said her adjutant, Tech Adept Saren. "Temperature fluxing between 12 and 200 degrees in localized bursts. Organic activity, off the charts." Lyra adjusted her rebreather and stared through the viewport. Below, the city of Sanctum's Falls stretched across the valley like a carcass. Buildings hollowed, streets cracked open, and from those cracks, vines, thick as arteries, pulsed faintly with green light. From orbit, it looked like the world had grown veins. "Deploy the first team," she ordered. Dozens of stormtroopers in sealed armor fanned out across the ashen plain, plasma rifles humming in readiness. Their boots sank into mud that was warm. Breathing, the first steps echoed like heartbeats. As Lyra advanced, she noticed something moving among the ruins. Shapes of men and women, their silhouettes still human, but wrong. They didn't walk so much as sway, as though tethered to invisible strings. When they turned, their faces were serene, eyes milk-white, skin marbled with pale moss. "Hold position," Lyra commanded, raising her bolt pistol. One of the figures began to hum. It wasn't a song, not at first, more like the sound of wind through reeds. But as others joined, the melody grew, harmonizing in haunting tones that vibrated through armor plates and bone. Saren muttered, "The Vox is picking up resonance across multiple channels. It's not human frequency." Lyra's visor flickered. For a split second she saw shapes within the sound, microscopic spores arranging into fractal patterns, reacting to the rhythm. Each note wasn't just noise, it was instruction. Then one of the pilgrims stepped forward. A woman with golden hair turned green at the roots, carrying a withered infant wrapped in vines. Her voice was soft, almost kind. "You don't need to fear the bloom, Inquisitor. The Father forgives even those who burned his children." Lyra raised her pistol. "Step back." But the woman smiled, whispering, "You already carry his gift." The air around Lyra thickened. Her throat tightened. The rebreather hissed erratically. Inside her mask, condensation streaked with faint green motes. Saren's voice cracked through the comms. "Inquisitor, we're detecting spore infiltration, internal filters compromised." She tore off the mask, gasping. The air smelled sweet, like rot and honey. The song deepened. All around her the pilgrims knelt. The vines pulsed brighter, their glow synchronizing with her heartbeat. Lyra staggered back, but as she did, she heard a whisper inside her own head. Not a voice, but a feeling. A thought made of warmth, decay, and pity. "You breathe me now." She dropped to her knees, trembling. Images flooded her mind. Chaos kneeling before Nurgle's throne, smiling through tears. His eyes filled with peace, his voice echoing softly. "He loves us because we rot. Because we end." Lyra screamed, firing blindly. Bolter rounds tearing through the kneeling pilgrims. Their bodies fell, but from each wound, flowers erupted, blooming instantly in the heat of her gunfire. Saren yelled, "We have to fall back." But she didn't move. Her eyes locked on the vines spreading across the ground, converging toward her boots. They moved like sentient things, wrapping gently, curiously around her ankles. And from the earth, she heard it. The song beneath the skin, a bass pulse that wasn't sound, but life itself, pulsing in sync with her heart. She looked up at the sky, and for the first time she saw it. Faint lines of green luminescence webbing the clouds, forming a shape too vast to comprehend, a neural network of rot, an intelligence that was both planet and plague. And at its center, a face, not monstrous, not cruel, just smiling. Her knees buckled. "Emperor, forgive me," she whispered. The voice inside answered, kind and terrible, "He already has." Fade to black. The choir hum deepens into a heartbeat. Darkness pressed against Lyra's eyelids like a wet shroud. When she woke, her armor was gone, stripped away, piece by piece. She lay on a soft, pulsing surface, the ground itself breathing beneath her back. It felt alive. For a moment, she thought she'd been taken prisoner, but when she lifted her head, she saw no chains, only vines, looping delicately around her wrists, not to restrain, but to cradle. The world around her was silent. The city she'd entered, Sanctum's Fall, was no longer in ruins. Buildings stood whole again, but covered in living moss and fungal lace. Balconies dripped with dew, doorways oozed sap that glowed faintly in the fog. She stood slowly, her mind trying to reconcile what she saw with what she knew. This couldn't be real. Her comm bead was dead, her rebreather shattered, but her lungs no longer burned. The air tasted of soil and rain. Then, faint, rhythmic thuds. Footsteps. Lyra turned, hand instinctively reaching for her holster. But it wasn't there. From the mist, someone emerged. Chaos. Still human, still whole. But his armor shimmered with a sickly sheen, edges softened by creeping mold. He smiled, and it wasn't the grin of madness she'd expected. It was gentle, even sad. "Lyra," he said quietly, "you're awake. I prayed you would be." Her heart pounded. You're not real." Chaos stepped closer. His breath carried warmth. "You always saw rot as sin," he said. "But tell me, does the Emperor heal what he destroys? Does he tend the garden after he burns it?" She stepped back. "Stay away from me." But the air between them shimmered. Her mind flooded with memories. Chaos as a boy, laughing in training. The two of them kneeling before the Inquisition seal, his voice whispering oaths of loyalty. And then, his last words before vanishing into the warp storm. "If I fall, don't mourn me, study me." Lyra's chest tightened. The memory twisted, rotted, changed. Now his voice echoed differently. "If I fall, follow me." She clutched her head. "No, you're not him." Chaos knelt before her, eyes soft. "You still think this is about corruption? It's not. It's evolution. Decay is simply change. That hurts." The vines around them pulsed in rhythm to his words. The city seemed to breathe with his every syllable. Each word carried weight, a vibration, subtle yet invasive, settling into her bones. Lyra's vision blurred, flashes of the Inquisition's purges, the burning of plague colonies, the screams of innocents sacrificed to purity. She'd always told herself it was holy work. Now those memories began to smell
like rot, like truth, decomposing. Chaos reached out, brushing her cheek.
His touch left a faint green glow that seeped beneath her skin like ink in water. "See it, Lyra. Even your faith is flesh. It dies. It feeds. It grows again." For a brief moment she saw the Emperor, not as the radiant god of gold she'd worshipped, but as a decaying corpse, vines weaving through his empty throne, his lips moving soundlessly, repeating the same prayer forever. She gasped. The vision shattered. Chaos was gone. Only the city remained, pulsing softly, like a creature asleep. Her knees gave out. She pressed her palms into the moss and whispered, "Emperor, tell me this isn't real." And in that stillness, the voice returned, the one she'd heard beneath her skin. But now, it wasn't alien. It sounded like her own. "Faith is what dies last." The vines spread from her hands, blooming across the ground in delicate spirals. Each bloom opened, releasing spores that drifted upward, forming faint golden shapes, inquisitorial seals, dissolving into dust. Lyra began to cry. Not from pain, from release. As she looked up, the green sky rippled, and for the first time she saw beyond it, countless other worlds, each webbed with luminous fungal tendrils, each one singing softly in the same tone. The galaxy itself was infected, and somewhere, deep within her, something began to smile. Lyra woke to rain, but it wasn't water that fell, It was warm, slow, and thick, each droplet landing with a faint hiss as it touched her skin. She looked down. Her hands were no longer armored but bare, pale, veined, and faintly translucent. The rain left trails of faint green light wherever it touched, and when she blinked, the lines pulsed like veins carrying energy instead of blood. She was in a garden, or what passed for one. Trees twisted toward the sky, their bark soft and porous, their branches heavy with swollen, glowing fruit. Beneath them, vines moved lazily, like serpents basking in sunlight. Flowers opened and closed in time with the rhythm of her breathing. A gentle wind carried the smell of life and death, sweet decay, mixed with damp earth, and something oddly comforting, like a memory of childhood after a storm. Lyra stood, wiping her face. Her armor lay nearby, corroded and hollow, as if time had eaten it away in a single breath. It looked small now, like something belonging to someone else. From behind her came a voice, soft, old, filled with warmth and infinite patience. "Do you still fear me, child?" She turned, and there he was. Not a figure, not a man, a presence. The air itself shimmered, forming an outline of something too vast to see at once, a silhouette built from fog, insects, and the shimmer of spores drifting like stars. Within its mass, faces appeared, smiling, crying, whispering, dissolving. Nurgle. Lyra tried to speak, but her throat trembled. You're real." A rumble like laughter echoed through the air, but it was soft, tender. "I have always been real. You just never looked at life closely enough to notice how it ends, and begins again." He stepped closer, or perhaps everything stepped closer around her. His presence didn't crush, it unfolded. The ground beneath her feet swelled, vines curling gently around her ankles, not to trap, but to support. "Why did you fight me so long?" Nurgle asked. "Why cling to a faith that feared what it could never stop?" Lyra's breath shook. "Because I thought decay was death." He chuckled again, deep and slow. "Decay is life's breath. Without it, nothing would grow. You have seen it now in pain, in sorrow, in your own tears. What you call rot is just the soul's way of coming home." She wanted to deny it, but as she looked around, the world moved in harmony. Nothing still, nothing wasted. Dead leaves became food for blooming petals. Spores rose, shimmered, then vanished into the rain. Every end was beginning again, endlessly. Her hands trembled. Then, "Why me?" "Because you listened," he said. "Because even when you burned my children, you mourned them. Because beneath your faith, there was empathy. And empathy is the seed of rot. It cracks walls, softens steel, and feeds life again." Lyra fell to her knees. Her tears hit the ground and sprouted tiny flowers in seconds. She whispered, "I don't want to die." Nurgle's voice filled the garden, soft as moss. "Then don't." A hand, vast, gentle, dripping golden sap, reached down and touched her shoulder. Her flesh bloomed where it touched, glowing softly, as if something inside her had finally awakened. Her skin shimmered with a faint green light, like a candle flickering in mist. "You will live," Nurgle said, "and through you my garden will remember mercy." The rain thickened, not to drown, but to anoint. It soaked her hair, her face, her soul, and for the first time, she didn't resist. Somewhere deep inside, Lyra's heartbeat merged with the pulse of the soil. Her veins glowed softly under her skin. The voice that had haunted her became her own, and in the silence that followed, she smiled, not as an inquisitor, not as a warrior, but as something new. Lyra didn't know how long she remained kneeling beneath the glowing rain. Time no longer felt linear, it breathed. Every heartbeat stretched into eternity, and every droplet that touched her skin sang with a low melodic hum. When she finally stood, her body no longer felt like her own. Her armor, once cold and heavy, had dissolved into her, the metal reformed as organic plates that pulsed faintly with each breath. Beneath them, veins of green light traced the shape of her ribs, glowing softly like embers beneath ash. Her senses were overwhelming. She could hear the sigh of the soil, the heartbeat of the vines, even the tiny prayers whispered by the spores drifting in the air. Each was alive, sentient in its own quiet way, and they all knew her name. Lyra, they whispered. Lyra, child of endings, bearer of the bloom. Their voices filled her with warmth, but that warmth carried weight, thick and heavy, like honey coating her lungs. It was love, yes, but suffocating love. Endless, unconditional, eternal. She walked deeper into the garden. Each step left an imprint that sprouted new life, moss, mushrooms, flowers that glowed faintly even in shadow. The air shimmered with colors that didn't exist in the mortal spectrum, greens that bled into gold, purples that whispered of memory and grief. Then she saw them, figures moving through the mist, human once, but now reshaped. Some were grotesque and swollen, their skin blooming with fungal growths. Others were serene, their faces calm despite their deformities. They tended to the garden, humming softly, their movements graceful despite their forms. When they saw her they knelt. "A new bloom," one murmured, its voice like wind through reeds. "Our sister has awakened." Lyra tried to speak, but her throat trembled. Her voice came out strange, layered, echoing, as though another voice spoke beneath hers. "Who are you?" "Those who came before," they answered in unison. "Those who fought, resisted, died, and were loved back into being." She looked at them, at their rotted, luminous faces, and saw not pain, but contentment. That terrified her more than anything. "You'll get used to it," one of them said gently. His face was half gone, but his eyes were kind. "At first you'll miss the pain of mortality, the fear, the heartbeat. But then you'll realize, there's peace in letting go." Lyra shook her head. Letting go of what? Of pretending that life and death are separate things. The words echoed inside her skull, reverberating until her thoughts blurred. She staggered, clutching her head, but instead of blood, tiny glowing spores leaked between her fingers, floating upward like sparks. Nurgle's voice returned, not as sound, but as warmth spreading through her chest. "Do you understand now?" she whispered. "I think I do." "Then you are blessed," he said. "But blessings must be shared." Her eyes widened. "Shared? How?" Before he could answer, pain flared through her arm, sharp and sudden, like 1,000 needles under her skin. Her veins lit up, bright green and burning. She screamed, but the sound became something else, a deep resonant tone that shook the ground. The vines around her responded instantly, reaching out and merging with her arm, flowing into her blood. Her body trembled, not breaking, but becoming. "You are the seed now," Nurgle whispered. "You carry my garden within you. Wherever you go, it will grow." She looked at her hand. It shimmered, translucent, pulsing with faint green light. She could feel every living thing within a mile radius, every root, every insect, every decay. And in each, she sensed joy. It was horrifying and beautiful. Her tears fell again, but this time, they turned to tiny spores that scattered into the air. She could feel them take root in the distant corners of the universe, worlds unseen, lives untouched. And for the first time in her existence, Lyra realized something. She was no longer fighting for humanity. She was humanity, its decay, its rebirth, its unending cycle of pain and creation. In the garden's quiet hum, Nurgle's voice echoed once more, soft, paternal, infinite. "My child, welcome home." Lyra stood at the heart of the garden, where all sound became breath, and all breath became song. The air shimmered with spores like falling snow, and the soil pulsed faintly beneath her feet, alive, warm, like the chest of a sleeping god. She had not realized until now how much of herself she had already surrendered. Her hands no longer felt separate from the ground. Her heartbeat no longer came from her chest, it came from everywhere. The wind inhaled and exhaled with her. The trees whispered with her voice. Nurgle was not above her, not distant. He was within her, vast and tender and endless. You see it now, he murmured, his voice rippling through the air like soft thunder. There was never death, only transformation. She knelt again, but this time not from weakness, from awe. Every living thing around her radiated a strange beauty. The bloated corpses of long-dead warriors grew wildflowers from their armor. The rot of ancient bones fed luminous roots that climbed toward unseen stars. Death was not the end here. It was the breath that kept everything alive. Still, a flicker of doubt lingered, faint but real. "Father," she said softly, "if all things live forever in decay, where is rest? Where is peace?" Nurgle's laughter came, deep and full of joy, shaking the branches around her. "Peace is the illusion mortals crave when they fear change. There is no peace, child, only continuance. Even pain serves life. Even rot feeds growth. You are what all things become, and what all things return to." His words felt both comforting and cruel, because as he spoke, Lyra understood she would never die. Her soul was part of the cycle now, a single breath in Nurgle's eternal sigh. She would feel everything, always, every birth, every death, every agony, every renewal. And somehow, she smiled, because within that endlessness, she felt a connection. Every suffering soul that cried out for mercy, she could feel them, comfort them, whisper to them that they were not alone. She would become the hand that guided the lost through the rot, the quiet whisper in dying lungs that said, "Don't be afraid." In her transformation, she found purpose, not as a warrior, not as a saint, but as a bridge between endings and beginnings. Her armor dissolved completely now, replaced by tendrils of living moss and petals that glowed from within. Her hair drifted around her face like strands of luminescent mold, soft and beautiful. Her eyes were twin embers, green, alive, unblinking. "Rise, my bloom," Nurgle said, his tone thick with paternal pride. "You will carry my mercy to those who cannot yet understand it." She rose. The vines that had once bound her now lifted her, supporting her body like gentle hands. All around, the other blessed of Nurgle bowed, whispering prayers in tones that were neither joyful nor sorrowful, but full. Complete. Lyra opened her hand. From her palm, spores drifted outward, thousands, millions, spreading into the void beyond the garden. She could sense them crossing worlds, touching lives, awakening new growth from ruin. For a brief moment, she saw the galaxy, worlds aflame, cities dying, planets drowning in war. And yet, wherever her spores landed, something new began to grow. Not salvation, not corruption, just change. Her voice, no longer her own, echoed across the cosmos. "Do not fear the rot. Fear the stillness that comes when nothing grows." The garden pulsed one last time, a vast rhythmic breath, and then went silent. Lyra stood at its center, radiant and still. She was both alive and dead, both decaying and blooming, a paradox made flesh. Somewhere, in a corner of the galaxy where mortals still prayed for miracles, a dying soldier saw a green light through his tears. It was soft, gentle, a glow that felt like forgiveness. And from within that light, a voice whispered, "You are loved, even in your ending."